Folks, welcome into the Irish NFL show. It's Sunday nights. The international games are out this week. It's been a busy week with the draft, international games, and now this presented by Trust, the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, and many arcade systems. More on that throughout the show. We have got the lead draft analyst, among many other things, for Bleacher Report. Connor Rogers kicking the show off. Connor, it's great to welcome you back.
Oh, it's great to be back, guys. How are you?
It's good, sir. It's been a busy few weeks, to be fair. Yeah, for yourself.
A little bit, huh? I mean, it's fun. This is the best time of the year. It has been a busy couple of weeks, but you know what? I really love that everybody's enthusiasm about the draft. It's not just me, like when I was a kid, obviously a while ago that I was the one excited about the draft. I feel like everybody loves the draft now. So I do not take it for granted.
Connor, I suppose much to Brian O'Leary's charging, I have a soft spot in my heart for the city of Philadelphia and for the Philadelphia Eagles. They had themselves a pretty nice draft and a pretty solid offseason.
They had a great offseason. I mean, they were one of my winners for the offseason on Bleacher Report today. I think I look at it and go, you go into free agency, you get Hassan Reddick. Now you have Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick screaming off the edge. But what they did on draft night was just great preparation. I mean, moving up, you get Jordan Davis. Now you got a big beast in the middle for those two edges to have a lot of space to work one-on-one against tackles. They got Nakobe Dean, I thought the best value pick in the third round, who could be a high upside linebacker in the middle of the field. That's something the Eagles traditionally never ever have. They never invest in that. And then the trade for AJ Brown. I mean, this is the muscle to Devontae Smith's refinement, where you have a 1 and 2 wide receiver that really complement each other well. A team that knew how to run the hell out of the football last year with Jalen Hurts in their backfield. They got a big, nasty, physical, athletic offensive line. They got Cam Jurgens in the second round to learn behind Jason Kelsey or maybe play guard. We'll see how that shakes out this year. I really love what the Eagles did. I think they're in for a big year. I think when you look at some of the pieces the Cowboys lost and you look at how Washington's retooling a bit. They're a solid team. The Giants are rebuilding. You don't worry about them. The Eagles are a legitimate threat in the NFC East. And if I think I was picking today, I would roll with the Eagles to win that division.
Connor, Colin was referring to my love for the Giants because obviously that's my team. I'm going to start there. So Thibodeau at 5 and Neil at 7. Everybody felt we'd go offensive line at 5. The way it obviously fell, it kind of fell into our lap essentially. But you've been quite high on Thibodeau throughout the process in terms of how you feel he is as a top player. And for a long time, people were saying he was going to go 1, if not 1, certainly 2. Obviously, things evolved over the months. It's worked out well for the Giants because it's been quite some time since we had a proper pass rusher.
Yeah, and it's what the Giants championships are built on, right? I mean, we all know about Eli Manning, but to me it's Justin Tuck and that defensive front that was constantly wreaking havoc against Tom Brady. And the Giants, the top of this draft to me was exactly what they've been missing for a long time, since they've been losing for a while, is trench play. It's dominant pieces in the trenches that get back to being New York Giants football. I think Thibodeau is a guy with excellent explosiveness off the edge. I think that him and Azeez Ojulari are gonna get them where they need to be up front with Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence in the middle. That front four looks really, really good. Without Thibodeau, you kind of shrug and go, it's okay. With Thibodeau, completely revamps that entire front four. Evan Neal was a guy that made so much sense for them throughout this process. I thought they'd take him at 5. They get him at 7. That's incredible value. He started at right tackle in 2020. The Giants wanted a right tackle in this draft. They feel really good about the progress Andrew Thomas has made on the left side. And now you get Evan Neal, who has really good 2020 tape on the right side. I think his feet are better suited for the right side. I love his drive blocking ability. You can give him a little bit more help, chip help on the right side with the tight ends. They got Daniel Bellinger later on, who I love. That was one of my favorite value picks of the draft. The Giants, for so long have been trying to put a roof over a house that didn't exist with Dave Gettleman. With Joe Shane, it's ground up. Ground floor, here we go. Let's build a base, and then we'll stack the deck with, our wide receivers, our corners, all these things. They got a ground floor in the trenches now to be a tougher, more hard-nosed football team. It's a rebuild. Everybody's going to have to be patient, but they got the right guy there coming from Buffalo that's going to build it the right way.
Connor, is the combination of wide receivers Sky Moore and Patrick Mahomes one of the best dynamic duos in football now after this draft, or am I just giving you a hot take?
No, it's fun, man. It's a great fit, right? I think when you look at fit, it's so important. When you look at Sky Moore's testing, he had one of the best 10-yard splits in the entire draft at wide receiver, which is his explosive acceleration. And when you think of the Chiefs' offense, that explosive acceleration is what you think of. It's the pitch passes, it's the vertical throws, it's the ability when things break down to work back to Patrick Mahomes or take over the top of the defense. And Sky Moore can do all those things. So everybody's freaking out about Tyreek Hill being gone, and I get it. It's a big loss, but you still have Travis Kelce there. Now you're a little bit more rounded. You have a possession guy in Juju Smith-Schuster. You have a deep threat in Marcus Valdes-Scantling. You have Sky Moore, who could do a little bit of everything. He can win over the top. He can win in the intermediate range. You still have McCole Hardman's speed there. The Chiefs are a threat, and I think they're a little bit of a tougher team inside, where maybe they're built to run the football a little bit more, especially when you look at the defense they got. Can that defense now get off the field? Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Leo Chanel, really, really good defensive picks that are starters in my eyes, not just role players, but they're legitimate starters. So, I like that fit a lot. It's going to be the talk of town in Dynasty Fantasy Leagues because Sky Moore is the kind of player that he goes somewhere with a quarterback that can not only extend plays but push the ball vertically. He can explode. We already saw the monster production last year. Now he goes to the right NFL fit for that.
Connor, the Baltimore Ravens last year, I don't know if I've ever seen an injury list quite like what they had.
Yeah.
They've obviously made changes with the defensive coordinator. They still have to get things sorted out with Lamar and the contract. But given what they did in the draft, and they should be a lot healthier, and look, Harbaugh is Harbaugh, they're pretty well set up for this year.
Yeah, they're one of my big bounce back teams in terms of great defense, which is the story of the Baltimore Ravens, right? When you look at it now, you got the big hulking nose tackle in Travis Jones. You got a playmaking safety in Kyle Hamilton that can kind of run around, kind of like how Troy Polamalu did against their rival, the Steelers. You have Marcus Williams, who you paid a lot of money in free agency to be a reliable coverage piece over the top. And now you have Kyle Hamilton that can run around and make plays. You got a top 5 player in the draft in me and Tyler Linderbaum. They're going to run the ball, protect Lamar Jackson. They're going to wear teams out. That's what they're going to do, and they're built to do that. They're going to go 13 personnel. They got 3 tight ends that can catch the ball. You got Mark Andrews, Charlie Kohler, Isaiah Likely. They're a really, really good team, and they're a team that teams just don't like playing them because they're just so physical. They're so much bigger and nastier than a lot of football teams. And like you said, the injuries last year was a fluky year. You don't see a team get banged up like that. That's going to regress back to the mean, and that's good news for Baltimore Ravens.
Connor, everybody's been very impressed by the job in which Joe Douglas has done this offseason between a very proactive free agency period and then obviously leading into the draft, and in particular the trade up late in the fourth round to get Jermaine Johnson, who for a long time was projected to go top 10, top 15. Do you have any reason as to why he felt it? Was it just purely around strategic moves of teams picking up other positions rather than the player himself?
It really was. It was teams got caught in the wide receiver run. We saw a bunch, right? Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jamison Williams, Jahan Dotson went in there. Nobody had Jahan Dotson going in the top 20. So you had that run take off. You had the fact that a player like Trevor Penning that traditionally wouldn't go that early coming out of FCS and having his own struggles, the need for tackle was so big for the Saints. And then, you look at the run on corners. Stingley and Sauce went earlier than everybody thought, and Trent McDuffie was a trade-up. Kaiir Elam was a trade-up. So when you look at it like that, Jermaine Johnson became the forgotten man, which is kind of crazy. It happened to George Karlaftis, too. George Karlaftis fell all the way to the end of the first round. So these were pass rushers that have violent hands. They're tough. They can play the run. But teams didn't value them maybe because they're not as explosive as Hutchinson and Thibodeau were. And maybe that'll come back to bite them because they're pro-ready. They have a good plan of attack. They have a good array of moves. I saw with Jermaine Johnson, the two-handed swipe, the spin move, the rip and dip. He just knows how to win. He's got polish. He's an older prospect. He's had a long road JUCO, Georgia, Florida State. But, from everything I heard, it was more of and the Jets were shocked, by the way. The Jets were shocked that he started to fall. When he fell to 15, they picked up the phone and said, how do we get back in? Couldn't get back in. He's falling. Didn't think he'd make it by the Ravens again, and he does. And they found a way to get back up by trading with Tennessee. And he was a top 10 player for them in the draft. They loved the guy. Robert Saleh and him really hit it off, and I think that's going to pay dividends for both of them in the long run.
One team that gets a lot out of their passing game, Connor, is the Buffalo Bills, and then they go after now James Cook, running back from Georgia. Like this, it's really went up a level for them now. And for me, like the expectation of this Bills offense just goes up and up and up in that division.
I mean, they're terrifying, right? Like, who wants to run into an alien at quarterback and Josh Allen that can run, throw the ball a mile, extend plays, play in the pocket, do everything? Like you said, you got Stephon Diggs, a true number one. You have Gabe Davis, a vertical number two. You have Isaiah McKenzie, a gadget guy. You have Dawson Knox, a high upside receiving tight end. And then you add into the equation a guy like Cook that can take over when Motor Singletary leaves in free agency after next year. That's just a dynamic pass catching running back. If you use him as an outlet, I mean, guys, we know how much linebackers need to dedicate to Josh Allen and not let him out of the pocket and let him get past the line of scrimmage. How much conflict are those linebackers going to be in when it's James Cook chip blocking, Josh Allen rolling, Josh Allen making them cheat up, and then James Cook goes over their head and catches the ball and run? I don't know how you stop the Buffalo Bills right now. I really don't. I think they're the most talented team in football. I think they're the number one team on my power rankings. And they're going to be they got to show it, right? They haven't been to the dance in this era. They got to show it. They got to prove it. But every single ingredient is there for that team to be a freaking powerhouse. And I think it's going to come to fruition.
It'll be an interesting one, certainly.
Big expectations.
Yeah, we've seen that
Scary.
before. I talked about the Eagles earlier, the dream team, but another team who have been a storied history, we'll say, and recent years have been very, very good, but an interesting offseason. The 49ers, Mike McDaniel, who Kyle Shanahan has brought with him everywhere he's gone, goes to the Dolphins. There's the whole piece where Jimmy's still there. Whatever is going on with Debo, they've lost some other pieces in terms of Jones going to the Broncos. What did you think of their draft, and where did the 49ers sit as we are in I mean, we're in May, but it can't be all happy campers there.
No, I mean, number one, I have them at 9 on the top 10. I did, so still a legit contender, but not as scary as we're used to seeing. And I think, guys, the thing for me is there's no sign Debo's coming back, and maybe he does now that he didn't get traded and they figure out the money or whatever, but it hasn't been optimistic there. You lost Mike McDaniel, who I've always heard for years is one of the smartest offensive minds in football and the orchestrator of that run game. And Kyle can orchestrate a run game, but Mike is really the guy that was doing it week after week based on matchups. So who fills that void the way Mike can do it? The draft, kind of peculiar, right? Drake Jackson is a guy that has all the tools as a pass rusher. He couldn't put them together at USC. A running back, a power back in Ty Davis-Price at the third round felt really, really early and unnecessary. Danny Gray, I love the speed at wide receiver. He'll have a good fit in that offense. And then a couple, developmental offensive linemen. And I like Tariq Castro-Fields, the corner in the 6th round. I don't know if it's enough. And I don't know if Trey Lance is... I'm not saying this indicating anything. I don't know if Trey Lance is ready. But they haven't given us any indications that Trey Lance is ready. And like you said, Jimmy's just hanging around there. What is what are people going to say if Jimmy wins that job in camp after all they invested in going up to get Trey? So this is a team that, the high-flying vibes have kind of taken a little bit of a hit. They always overcome that, and they're so good up front on defense. They run the ball, but I think they need Trey Lance to show he's ready for primetime and take a massive step for them to be back in the NFC Championship. And I don't think they could do it without Debo.
I don't know, there was players that dropped in the draft more so because of injuries that they have, whether they're going to play next season. David Ojabo and the Kobe Dean going 3rd round. But Jameson Williams isn't expected. Well, it's up touch and go whether he's going to be ready for next season. And during our live show last week, we felt it was more likely a team would draft for him who has the luxury of not needing them necessarily at the start of the season. But yet the Lions are probably far from that. They're a team that need as many players as they can get. We're surprised they made the jump. And when they did, initially, everybody felt potentially they were jumping up for a quarterback.
I was surprised by the move. 32-12 is a long way to go. It's not something you see in a lot of drafts with a division rival, and they kind of fleeced the Vikings on the trade value, so that was very surprising. Usually you pay a tax in that situation, and they didn't pay a tax.
Not even a 4th round in return.
No, it was a really poor job, honestly, by the Vikings and a great job by Brad Holmes. So I wasn't shocked they went up for JMO. They needed speed in the offense, and they're really patient there. They're safe. They could lose a lot of games this year, and they're safe. Those guys are on 5-year deals. They like Jared Goff more than the general public. They feel like they have an excellent intermediate target in Amon-Ra St. Brown. They like TJ Hawkinson. They like their backfield. They think they have an identity to be a tough, hard-nosed team, especially with Aiden Hutchinson. And they felt like the upside of Jamison Williams as the potential top receiver in this draft with sub 4.3 wheels and route polish is going to pay dividends for them in year 3, maybe the end of this year, but really year 3 and on, that it was worth going up for him rather than at 12. Drake was gone. Garrett Wilson was gone. Chris Olave was gone. So you kind of found yourself in a difficult situation where Jamison's talent was well worth it. And once again, not every team had the luxury that if they come out losing early this year that their seats won't get warm. That won't happen in Detroit. So they thought it was a worthwhile gamble for their offense. And to be fair to the Lions, you look at their team now, a couple of years ago or even last year, nothing scares you. And now you have Aiden Hutchinson on one side, Jamison Williams on the other. Those guys scare you.
Very, very quick fire round before we let you go, Connor. You're a busy man. One team that's very well supported in Europe, not just Ireland, is the Patriots. And I feel like
it breaks my heart, by the way. I grew up a New York Jets fan in New Jersey. It's got to be because of Tom Brady, right?
Well, Brady's got literally is it 2 connections to Ireland through Cork and Cavan? Big shout out to Cork and Cavan. But no, seriously, Connor, seriously, what was going on there last week? I think projected 32nd with all their picks. Interesting choices.
Yeah, way off the board, right? I think you can look at it and go, they got guys that fit what they want to do and are going to be okay NFL players. And Strange, Pierre Strong, Marcus Jones, the slot corner, one of the best returners I've ever evaluated. Why not move? Those guys aren't going in that round. Those guys aren't going in the next round. I think it's, Bill can be a little bit stuck in his ways. And the board they build, to a fault maybe, they stick to it. I'll say this about New England. We're going to learn a lot. Tom Brady won a Super Bowl in Tampa, okay? What Bill Belichick has not had a lot of success since Tom left on what he's used to having success. Bill Belichick's a great coach and a great football man and knows 80 times more about football than I could ever dream of. But they feel like they're starting to fall a little behind compared to what we're seeing. And I think at the end of the day, guys, you can be about the Patriot way. You could be about your system. But talent wins you football games. Talent has always won you football games. Talent will always win you football games. And I look at New England, I don't think they're a bad football team. I think they're a well-coached team. I think they got some really nice pieces. You look at what the Bills have done. I don't see them running with the Bills, not even close. You look at what the Dolphins have done. Serious questions about Tua. Dolphins have had a lot of talent over the last couple of years. Listen, I'll never get ahead of myself with my New York Jets, but they had a really good draft. And I'm not saying they're going to give New England problems, but you cannot deny that they had a really good draft. They're probably not ready to jump New England, but at some point you got to keep up in that division, and I see them falling behind the Bills, and that has to be pretty scary for a franchise that was a legitimate dynasty. There's no way around it.
The NFL world kind of lost its mind this week because of Ryan Tannehill's comments. And I watched it going, Oh my God, the Broncos were ahead of the curve because we had this with Joe Flacco 3 years ago. So amazing for the Broncos to be ahead of the curve in the NFL. That's been a while. But I suppose, look, the last time we saw the Titans on the field, it was incredibly disappointing. It was incredibly disappointing from Tannehill. It was incredibly disappointing from a play calling perspective. Nothing worked for them. AJ Brown has moved on. What did you think about the rest of their offseason moves and their draft?
Oh, man, you talk about New England and the whole falling behind approach. How do we not think that right now with the Titans, right? I mean, it's just tough. It's tough. I like Treylon Burks a lot, and I think he's going to be a player there. But this was the number 1 seed in the AFC, the glorious, competitive AFC. And now you look at them and go, am I picking them to make the playoffs? I don't know yet. I don't know yet. So it's been tough. teams get backed against the wall in financial situations. They clearly found themselves in one with A.J. Brown. I'm rooting for Malik Willis. It's going to take a while. That's not even a blip on the radar right now. So if Derrick Henry can get healthy, they can run the ball like we've seen them run the ball, and that defense gets healthy and right under Mike Vrabel, they're going to be an issue. But when you look at what the Browns have done, you look at what the Bengals have done, you look at the Bills, you look at the Chiefs, you look at the Colts, guys, in the division with Matt Ryan right now. The Titans have some issues right now, and Tannehill has to have his best year of his career, and we'll see if he can get it right. But they're a team that absolutely feels like they took a little bit of a step back.
Connor, staying within that division, we had Sean Prendergast on from the Houston Sports Radio this week, and he feels the Texans are finally turning a corner after a couple of years. He felt it was a really productive draft with Stingley getting dropping back again to 15 and still getting an offensive line guy, and then Messi, the wide receiver from Alabama in the second round. Were you impressed with how they went about their business this year?
I was. I think they did some really calm and collected things. Stingley's an upside pick, but Kenyon Green, rock solid guard. Jalen Petrie replaces Justin Reed on the back end. I like Mechie if he's healthy. I think he could be a really good number 2 for Brandon Cooks as the number 1. And they got some value. Dameon Pierce was my 4th rated running back in this draft. They could not run the football last year, guys. Now Kenyon Green in front, Dameon Pierce in the backfield. I think they did a lot of really nice things, honestly. And then you talk about the athleticism of Christian Harris in the middle of the defense. So they're still far away. They're trying to figure out what they have in Davis Mills and if they need to go into the quarterback class next year that's really, really talented, or if Mills is going to overachieve expectations. But at least they have some pieces on the roster that are turning the corner to be a competitive football team again with all this draft capital they've collected. And I think they spent it in a really good way.
Connor, we really appreciate you coming on at Connor two ends, Jay Rogers on Twitter. And Connor, look, thanks so much for coming on. Hopefully it won't take this long to chat to you again. We'll maybe chat to you in a few months. Appreciate the support, and hope you enjoy the rest of the offseason.
Yeah, let's catch up in the summer. I'll be much more alive, I promise. You'll catch me refreshed, coming off vacation, feeling good. I'll have a real voice again. You got about half my voice right now, so it's always a lot of fun talking to you guys. And let's definitely catch up this summer and talk about this 2022.
Number of front office positions with the Buffalo Bills, the Carolina Panthers, the Colts, building up to his experience before getting his opportunity in 2013 to become a GM in the league. We're delighted to welcome the general manager of the Los Angeles Chargers, Tom Telesco. Tom, it's an honor to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. This is a really interesting interview. Never done one like this before.
Thank you very much. And look, Tom, we ask everyone this, right? Like I think we sort of had a conversation off camera there, but have you any Irish heritage? Have you been to Ireland before? I believe you may have some heritage on your wife's side of your family.
Yeah, not on my side, but my wife's side. My wife, her maiden name is Connolly. So that one's pretty easy one to figure out, right? So so she's Irish. She has not been to Ireland. I've not been to Ireland. I'm pretty sure her parents have. But that's to the extent of that. Although, and here's my other one, so I grew up in Buffalo, and my dad is Italian, but he grew up in South Buffalo, and South Buffalo it pretty much is the same way. It's heavily Irish, very big Irish neighborhood in South Buffalo. My dad was the only Italian, I think, in the whole neighborhood. But that's the way he grew up there.
We've had the good fortune to have Jim Kelly on, and he has some great stories about the Irish in Buffalo. And but I think the Irish and the Italians, we've always gotten along, and we're delighted to welcome you. Tom, I suppose, look, reflecting on your time with the Colts, like 98, 2012, 154 wins, 12 playoff appearances, 8 division titles, 2 Super Bowl appearances, a victory over the Bears in Super Bowl 41. I mean, it's absolutely incredible ride there. How formative was your time there?
I mean, I'm so grateful and lucky for that experience. Yeah, so I had 3 years with the Carolina Panthers when Bill Pulling was there, and then 15 years with the Colts. But really, everything I learned in scouting and building a roster, and really just how to be a general manager, which is a big job. It's not just a scouting job. I learned from Bill Pulling and his son Chris Pulling, really at the Colts over that 15-year span. And obviously having we had a Hall of Fame GM with Bill, we had a Hall of Fame coach with Tony Dungy. And then after Tony, we also had Jim Caldwell. And then obviously we had Peyton Manning and, Edgerrin James and Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison, Dwight Freeney. So a lot of great players. But I learned a lot. I mean, that's where I learned everything. So I was there initially as a college scout. So I had the Northeast area of the country and then the Southeast, I believe. And then I got moved up to pro scouting, where I was scouting our opponents, the advanced scout of teams we're going to play, and then doing free agency reports and that sort of thing, and really enjoyed that part of the job. And then I was a director of pro scouting and then director of player personnel, where I did more with the draft. And, I had a chance to do a lot of work there and learn from some great people and get a chance to learn from Bill really on a daily basis. I was lucky. I always tell the people here, sometimes it's just location. My office door was about, 10 feet from Bill's door, and about another 5 feet from his son, Chris Pulling, who was the assistant general manager. Then he was the general manager when his dad was the president. So just a proximity. I mean, you're seeing what's going on a daily basis in the office and how things work beyond scouting, as far as dealing with assistant coaches, dealing with head coaches, dealing with agents, dealing with the league office, contracts, salary cap. So, I mean, I just learned a lot just by being there, trying to be a sponge and pick things up. And I wasn't even anticipating being a GM someday. I was just worried about doing my job the best that I had. But, everything I learned really comes from those guys.
And I remember hearing a story I think you told about one time, I think it was preseason, it was the first game, and it was maybe the Browns, and Peyton asked you for some intel on the Browns. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was, we were opening up with the Browns that year, and I was in pro scouting at that point, and one of my advanced scouting teams was the Browns. So when it's the first game of the year, you can't do a lot of work on what they did last year because there's so many changes in personnel. So, if you have that opening game, you can do a little bit of the first half of the first preseason game, maybe the second or third preseason game, but there's not a lot to do yet. But you do like to see them play a little bit in the preseason. Well, like first week of training camp, Peyton just grabbed me and asked me a specific question about their linebackers and what their drops were like. And I hadn't started them yet, because they hadn't played yet. And so I went back to my room and started looking at last year's stuff and to have an answer for him. The next day I grabbed him and I said, hey, look, I got the answer. And he's like, I already got it. Thanks. And he walked away. So that kind of showed me, one, like what his preparation skills are. They're second to none. But with him, like you always got to have an answer and be ready to have an answer at a moment's notice. So, but I just thought that was just really cool. It just shows the level he took it to be as good as he was. And I can see he asked me other questions over the years, and I always had an answer moving forward after that.
Tom, can I just ask you a question regarding this offseason, and in particular how you've been very active in terms of recruiting players to your defense? Obviously, there was the big name signing in free agency from the Patriots, Jackson, last week. Obviously, you took a safety in the draft. You've had the Mac trade. Was that with a view to how the defense played last year, or more so around the fact that the division has gotten even busier in terms of Russell Wilson coming in and 3 quality quarterbacks with great offenses in the division?
Yeah, well, as we finished last season and moved into this season, I knew last year, a brand new coaching staff, new head coach, obviously, but really, new schemes on both sides of the ball. And certainly on defense, when you do change the scheme, that means that, there may be some players you have that are really good players and might not quite fit exactly what you're looking for. But last year, you can't flip the whole roster, and you wouldn't want to either. I mean, some players you have to try and make them fit in certain situations. But certainly on defense, we had to really turn it over a little bit. Certainly on the defensive line, there were just some characteristics that we do now that's just different than we did in Gus Bradley's defense. And I've seen this before. Like when I was with the Colts early on, when we first arrived there, Jim Moore was the head coach. Vic Fangio was the defensive coordinator. We ran a certain type of defense there. And then when Tony Dungy came in as the head coach, and I believe at that point the coordinator was, I think it was Ron Marlis, but I may be wrong. But in any event, everyone knows what the defense that Tony Dungy runs, and it's a lot different than what Vic Fangio runs. So we had to change the whole thing. And it took a couple of years to get the personnel changed over for that, just because Tony ran it a lot different than Vic did. So it's the same thing here. But it also lined up in free agency where there were some players that we thought could help us, because sometimes you have to turn it over, but then you go look who's available, and we're like, boy, there's just not a lot available this year. It's just the way it works sometimes. Or you may not have the cap space to do it. Well, luckily we did. We did have a lot of cap space. So that lined up with the fact that there were some players out there, Khalil Mack, JC Jackson, Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day. Those guys can come in and we think can really fit this really well.
It's hard to believe as well, Tom. We're literally over a week out from the NFL draft. It feels like it was on 5 minutes ago now. What were your thoughts on how the draft went particularly in this first round when we had wide receivers going like sweets up until your pick? At 17, there were so many permutations that you could have went with, and you went for a guy in Zion Johnson. Did you expect Johnson to be there at 17 at the time, or were you surprised he was there?
I expected him to be there. I mean, the couple weeks leading up to the draft, and I think every GM does this, but you do a lot of work trying to forecast what's going to happen in front of you and what's going to happen a little bit behind you in case you want to trade back. So, I mean, we do a lot of work in forecasting and mock drafts just like everybody else does, trying to figure it out. And for me, it doesn't always necessarily mean where a player, which team he's going to go to, but just, is he going to go before us or not? So we're prepared. In this case, with all the work I did, I felt pretty confident he would be there. But when the Texans took Kenyon Green at that spot, that's when I started to get a little nervous, because I thought Kenyon Green would go after us and he didn't. And I also thought with Houston, I knew they had a need there, but I thought they were going to go a different direction, but they didn't. So when we got to our pick, I mean, I did have some thoughts of possibly trading back a little bit. But when Kenyon Green went off, and there was a couple teams, a couple picks after us that I knew had an offensive line need. Now, I don't necessarily know if they even liked our guy or if they would take that position. You don't know. You just kind of make educated guesses. But in the end, decided to stay put, take the guy that we like, and I move on from there. But it was the other interesting thing was, like you guys saw, no quarterbacks win. Those are usually pretty easy to fill in. But in all the work we did all the work thinking, all right, let's do it pretending no quarterbacks go in the top in front of us. And if a couple go, great, that would help us out. But if they don't, we'll be prepared for that.
Tom, some teams like my own Broncos struggle when drafting quarterbacks. We acquire them in other ways, but the Chargers have an amazing history, right? Fouts, Breeze, Rivers, and then obviously now Justin Herbert, who you were selecting. I think would be really interesting for fans here and probably everywhere would be kind of to get some insights into the evaluation process. I know with Herbert, the Senior Bowl played a role, and we've been very lucky. We can call Jim Nagy a friend of the show. He's been on with us 3 or 4 times, and he talks about the Senior Bowl and the exposure that teams get to guys down there. But can you talk to us, I suppose, about what, as a GM, and you obviously have your scouting experience, what are the traits you look for? What's the evaluation process when you know that you're going to be taking a QB and it's going to be somebody pretty high up in the way in which you took Justin?
Yeah, the first thing, and I've been lucky. I mean, most of my career, it's been, it was Peyton Manning my whole career in Indianapolis and Andrew Luck for 1 year. So, I mean, those are pretty high level quarterbacks, obviously. And then I come to the San Diego Chargers at the time, and Phillip Rivers is here. So I've been really, really lucky. But you have to realize when you're scouting these college quarterbacks, they're not all going to be perfect. And, when you're around guys like that, you just, as you're scouting a college quarterback, you want them to have all those qualities that those guys have. But, that's hard to find. And don't forget, those guys, when they were college players coming out in the draft, I mean, they weren't perfect either. Like, there's just no perfect players. It's not like this is a video game. So when we would go into this, and we did this when Phillip was here, because we knew at some point Philip wasn't going to play forever. We wanted to have a seamless transition to whoever the next quarterback was. So we were perfectly willing to, at some point, to draft a quarterback high, and he just sits for as long as he has to sit and behind Philip. Just never really lined up with the quarterback that we really felt good about, and Philip was playing at such a high level. So, but when we're looking at these quarterbacks, you look at the pluses and the minuses. You hope the pluses outweigh the minuses, and you hope some of those minuses you can work on. So, but I know in Justin's case, one of the things we really wanted to make sure is whatever quarterback our next quarterback was, we want to make sure he has some mobility to his game. Didn't necessarily have to be like Lamar Jackson, because that's just really rare. But a guy that can move around, you can run a boot with them. A guy that if it's third and 10, there's nothing there, he can go pick up 10, 11, 12 yards on his own with his feet. And that's the way this game is right now. I mean, defenses are very complex. So to have a quarterback with a little more dual threat, we thought something we'd like to have. So, so Justin fit that criteria. Obviously, the intangible makeup part of it is probably bigger than the physical. You're the face of the franchise. You have to be a team leader. You have to be a great teammate. Everyone's going to look to you. You got to be able to handle the ups and downs as a leader of the team. And that is things you grow into, but you have to kind of see that at the college level. And Justin had that. And it helped that he was a 4-year starter in college. So he was pretty mature coming out. And then the physical ability of, accuracy, which a lot of that is decision making too. Someone who can process quickly, make quick decisions, and accurate with the football. And arm strength's important. It's not the number one criteria, but certainly important. And Justin has that. But it's the most difficult position to me in professional sports to play. There's so much that goes into it. There's so much riding on it. So, and they're hard to scout. They just are. We've been very lucky. And like you mentioned, the Senior Bowl, the great thing about the Senior Bowl, and Jim Nagy's done such a great job there, but it's a great environment to watch players compete, because they're playing against other players who will be playing in the NFL. So even, in the SEC and the Pac-12, there's a lot of talented players in those conferences, but again, not every single one of those players will be playing in the NFL. They're just not. Most of those players will go on to work in other industries when they're done playing college football. But the Senior Bowl, it's good on good. And it's, multiple days we can watch a quarterback, throw. Now our scouts had watched Justin for a number of years. I was lucky enough, since we're on the West Coast, I saw him live at least twice, maybe 3 times. So I'd seen a lot of him already, but it still was a great spot to see him, interact with other players, see if those leadership characteristics are there that we saw at Oregon, and they were. He was voted captain of his team, the Senior Bowl, after just a couple of days. So that shows you the type of leadership capabilities he has. But that's a great event, and it's really good for all positions, but certainly with Justin, it was a big help too.
Tom, you've been quite consistent in taking running backs over the past few years in the draft, and yet last week in the 4th round, you just took Isaiah Spiller, and there was a lot of, I suppose, scouts and mocks that felt that he would go late 2nd round. Were you taken back and surprised by the fact that he fell to the 4th round? And was that, I suppose, in your thought process in terms of being a complementary player to Austin Eckler, who had a really good season last year?
Yes. It's hard to tell, especially at that position. There's a lot of running backs in the draft each year, it seems. There were a lot of good running backs this year. It's always hard to tell, like, who falls, who has great value. I mean, there's 32 teams in the league that the league spoke, and this is where the players went. But sometimes you just don't know. But in his case, I kind of thought in his case he may go a little bit higher than he did. But there was also like a pretty good running back group. But we think he fits us well. He's a pretty multi-dimensional back, and you see how we use Austin. Austin's not just a running back for us. He's, we can line him up at wide receiver, either outside or in the slot, and he can really operate very well in there. Isaiah, probably he's not that Austin like to put him out at receiver, but very good out of the backfield as far as running routes and catching the ball. So that's a big part of the offense. Obviously, pass protection is really huge for a running back. And, he's 6 foot, almost 220 pounds, and he'll continue to get better as a pass protector. But he's a nice all-around running back. And coming from the school that he played at and the competition he played at every week, and was very productive, he can give us a nice little mix in that running back room.
Absolutely. And Tom, another great Irish story might be in the offing for us over the next season. We potentially might have the first Irish NFL player in 37 years. The Saints signed a punter last week called Danny Whelan, but also woke up early on Sunday morning and seen the Los Angeles Chargers sign a kicker from Illinois who was born in Dublin called Donnie McCourt. So it's good times for the Chargers. Potentially, it could be the first Irish player for the Chargers, my first Irish player in the NFL in 37 years.
No kidding. I didn't know. You think at the very least, with all the soccer background, that you would have a kicker or punter that would have made his way over by now. But maybe James would be the first. He had a really good career at Illinois. He's got a big leg, very big leg on field goals and kickoffs, really consistent kickoff leg. He had a really nice senior year this year as far as a field goal kicker. So he got a good look in camp. And the one thing we've seen with specialists, certainly punters and kickers, probably more so the long snappers, but definitely punters and kickers, they all kind of develop at a different rate and a different time. I'm not a huge golfer, but it's kind of like a golf swing, trying to perfect that swing. So James would get a chance to come in here, compete, and kind of see where it goes. But yeah, so I think he moved to the States at age 8. So he's, true Irish heritage. His parents were born in Ireland, and they're Irish immigrants. So yeah, it's a pretty cool story.
And James McCourt, everyone, not Donnie, my bad. Colin, go ahead.
I suppose kind of looking at the way in which the game has expanded, and obviously the Chargers have a big fan base here in Ireland, in the UK, in Europe, and I think you got to experience that firsthand when the Chargers played the Titans in Wembley in 2018. I think a narrow 1-point victory that day. But the I suppose the growth of the game here, and yesterday we saw the league announce 5 games, so it's growing. We now have the game in Germany. Is it something, drawing on the experience that you have had, that you'd like to see the Chargers get out and play an international game again in the not too distant future?
Yeah, from a football perspective, it is really difficult, especially on the West Coast, to make that trip. The time change, the jet lag, it's not easy. But I really enjoyed the atmosphere. I had a pretty long gap. When I was with the Colts, we played in a preseason game in Tokyo a while back. And then I had not been to an international game in a long time until that game in London. And to see the passion for NFL football there, it was incredible. I mean, it felt like a playoff atmosphere just for a regular season game. And we were out either Friday or Saturday night getting dinner somewhere, and just walking around, and a couple of people stopped me in this pub that I was just looking inside, wasn't drinking at all, but just looking inside the pub, just stopped me and, said they were big Charger fans. And I mean, there's just the fact that someone would recognize a GM over in London, was pretty impressive. But it was a great atmosphere there. And then we played in Mexico City, after that. And that was the same way. I mean, we played Kansas City there, and just a great atmosphere in the stadiums. So, I enjoyed it. I think it's worth for your organization, for your club. I think it's worth it to do it, even though there is some downside on the football side of it, but there's things that we can work around. And it was also good for our team. When we went to London, we spent like 3 days practicing in Cleveland, which is on the East Coast. So we could gain 3 hours before we flew over. So it was kind of like a little bit of a team bonding event. They were all together for a week between, Cleveland and then going over to London to play. And it was a great experience. Plus, we won the game, so it always feels better when you win the game or when you fly home. But I really enjoyed it. I'd have no problems going back.
Tom, it's been quite a hectic few years for the Chargers. Obviously, there was the speculation about moving from San Diego, which finally came to pass. And then there was the kind of holding period in the StubHub Center before you got to move to the new stadium. The pandemic is not too long after that. Are you finally finding your feet in terms of being in a fixed abode as the GM of an NFL team?
You know what? I really don't think about it, but when you put it that way, yeah, I mean, it did. Like, this was the first year in our new stadium with fans, and it was awesome. Like you said, it's been a little bit of a journey, the last, 4 or 5 or 6 years. So yeah, you do feel like you're getting your footing a little bit. This year, with having fans for the first time in our new stadium since we moved, from the soccer stadium, and certainly since we moved from San Diego, I didn't even know what to expect, in our opening game. And the crowds were great. And to see this many people, wearing Charger jerseys, wearing Justin Herbert jerseys, it shows us that, we're building this the right way. And we knew it was going to take time. When you move into a new city and a new market, it wasn't going to happen overnight, and it still hasn't happened yet. We're still working on it. But, when you have a quarterback like Justin, And then when you have a head coach like Brandon Staley and you see, how we play, like our style of play, I mean, it's exciting to say the least. We go for a lot on fourth down. We throw the ball a lot. We get the ball up in the air. We like to score points, and we like to play an exciting brand of football. And that sells out here, and so do Stars. And you can do both. You can win and make sure you have an exciting football team. So it's been great. I do feel like we're starting to get our footing, and it's going to keep getting better every year.
We were fortunate to have media pass to the Super Bowl in that stadium. It's a fantastic stadium.
Hey, are there stadiums in Ireland that are big enough to have NFL games?
Crook Park, 90,000, 85.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so plenty big enough. Yep.
So if you want to come on over, we can maybe with U2 concert the night before, and then the Chargers.
You know what? You're too low on the totem pole with me, but maybe you should contact Commissioner Goodell and talk to Roger about it.
We're plugging away at that time.
There you go. Good.
Here, let's do it. State it against the Chargers in Crook Park. Try and manifest it. Tom, look, I think you're talking about Ireland there. The one thing I will say, in people in Ireland and the UK and Europe, there's a lot of Chargers fans over here, and also thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of NFL fans in Europe. So we really appreciate you taking the time coming on the show. We welcome on anytime, and hopefully we'll get over to LA at some point over the next year again and relive SoFi again. Maybe at a Chargers game. Thanks so much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me on. This was really fun. And you guys asked some great questions too. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Thank you very much.